Hello, my name is Mage and welcome to Black and White Thinking. Here are some thoughts and feelings on Harley Quinn Season 3, Episode 7. Hi guys, welcome back. Let's talk Episode 7 in all its glory and dysfunction. I have lots of feelings, 4 pages of notes, so let's do this. Chronologically until I inevitably go off track. So this episode opened with what might be our first real glimpse of Gotham City Sirens content in this show, really. They're starting to feel like friends and I like that. It's nice seeing them all together. And the use of Selina's character this season has been one of the more refreshing parts for me. And it's been really interesting to kind of see her arc develop and see her relationship with Harley and Ivy develop, even if she pretends it isn't developing. Depressed Bruce Wayne will never not be funny, irregardless of the setting, cause, or universe. Something that I briefly touched on in other videos, but I want to mention here. The animation is really good this season, and I know it's because the budget's been increased a lot. It's not an animator fault, it's how much the animator gets paid for, and this series was outsourced to South Korea to save DC money in the beginning. I'm glad that those Korean animators seem to be just getting paid a bit more now so they can do some better work, because they clearly weren't getting enough time in a lot of the cases in season 1 and 2. You can see even just like the expression work in the show has got a lot better. The lighting, the backgrounds. I'll talk about this again in a minute when I start talking about the Ocean B plot, because some of the artistic work that's done there was bloody amazing. There wasn't enough harlivy in this episode, but isn't it just on brand for me to complain about that? Is that not what you will come here for? What we did get was good though, cute girlfriend shit. It was nice seeing Harley taking care of Ivy, and Ivy being like, it's cute, you collect strays. And Harley helping with her big mission and being like, nope, if it's something you need doing, I as your girlfriend am going to go and do it. I really like that. I still think the Harley being a superhero stuff is pretty forced. And it's still something I'm not sure DC hasn't made the writers do. Like, I'm not sure how much of this is artistic choice or board member intervention, let's call it. I am glad that this kind of Harley isn't a total psychopath thing, which, again, I really need to make a whole video about the framing of this, because it's not even just that Harley being seen as a hero is out of her character. It also just frames her really differently to the other Gotham villains in the rogues gallery that she's so connected to. I don't know, I wonder if you're saying Harley isn't a psychopath, then you're saying that maybe Ivy is. And like, if you're gonna say that, just have the balls to say it. DC are constantly pissing about with Ivy's character, and sometimes I worry. Okay, in the DC fandom, and especially in the Harley and Ivy fandom, which is a hellscape most of the time, there is this discussion that constantly happens about whether Ivy's character has changed to fit Harley or to fit into Harley's stories better. And honestly, sometimes I feel like it's the other way around. I feel like a big part of making Harley more heroic is so that they can have Ivy be more evil, but give her an anchor, something she has been missing in a lot of her storytelling. It's why Harley is so important to her character. I know people like to act like she's been reduced to Harley's girlfriend, but that's really the least of our worries. She's barely Harley's girlfriend in any canon. She is like a raging feminazi evil cow in most of them. Please watch my Ivy video, I spent a lot of time on it and there are 3 more parts to come, but I talk about that a lot here. My point being, I don't think Harley's a hero and I think it's dumb, but I am glad that this whole thing came up through a friendship with Babs and not as a direct reaction, at least not yet, to something bad Ivy supposedly does. I don't think there's any way the show is gonna convince me in 3 episodes that this Harley who smashed Jarvis's head in with a bat here is Bat family material. It also feels a little bit strange that Barbara was like totally okay with that, but again, this show's balance of comic creativity and just being absolutely nonsensical is a thin one. I don't necessarily love the idea that Harley not leaving Batgirl to die is being framed as heroic, like, especially when we compare it to things that Harley has done previously, things that Ivy has done previously, just characters have done previously. I don't see how this is heroic in comparison. This all feels a little forced, which makes me feel like it was an executive decision and not an artistic one, but maybe I'm wrong. This episode very much felt like it was framing this idea that Harley can't be friends with Barbara because of Ivy, or because of a relationship she has with Ivy and therefore villainy, as if Ivy was the one that introduced Harley to villainy, which she very much wasn't, as we've seen in this show. Again, this is what I mean about it feeling forced. It almost doesn't fit the mould that this show has been going with in the first 2 seasons in terms of Harley's character. It's one thing to do it in the comics, right? They've had different phases of the comics where different people have done different things, and you could argue that they've been playing with that idea for a really long time. The reason I say this feels forced is because where the fuck has this come from? Again, we had our famous Game of Thrones Khaleesi moment like 5 minutes ago in canon. So the idea that this table is suddenly flipped, of how the turntables, and that Ivy is somehow morally more chaotic than Harley, again, in this show just feels weird. I'm, again, really trying not to judge until the season is over, and it's not that I think this is necessarily bad. I've quite enjoyed this season, but forced maybe. Because they also seem to frame Babs and Harley's relationship as something that cannot necessarily exist alongside but outside her relationship with Ivy, and it very much can and very much does. Sorry if you hear that, that's my dog getting up. And like, Harley is the person that did this, again, 5 minutes ago in canon, and...
You beat up an old lady? She was super jacked, and now I'm gonna take over all of Gotham!
Ivy is the one saying this, and...
So what, you really just wanna kill thousands of people just because?
Ivy wouldn't kill Batgirl. Ivy wouldn't leave her. Like, I don't know, the framing of this all was very strange. I also think it's a little unrealistic and a bit super weird and maybe making them look a bit stupid, but Harley and Ivy supposedly don't know that Bruce Wayne is the Batman, even though they are hanging out with Selina and Babs. Also, they were talking to Joker, and there was this whole bit with the Superman thing. But, like, Harley and Ivy are not that stupid. And I wouldn't be surprised if Harley finds out soon, but the idea that Ivy has not pieced this together feels plot holey, because Ivy is cleverer than that. But again, we still have 3 episodes, and Ivy is more green than person at the moment, which I wrote about in my notes and I'm sure we'll get to. I wonder if Bruce being Batman is going to be the thing that causes Harley to maybe rethink the whole framing of the situation, like maybe let's not kidnap Batman. If that's the case, I kind of think that's weak AF. Again, not making a judgment until it's played out. I also don't know how I feel about the choice to make Bruce an adversary to Harley and Ivy's relationship this season. I know it's not like actually to their relationship, he's not standing there with like homophobic Shirley Phelps signs, but this is how stories work. The conflict he has created is creating conflict in their relationship. It's not necessarily one I saw coming last season, and again, I'm not sure if I'm just really terrible at reading this show, which I guess could be the case, which is freaking hilarious if it is the case, because I've like dedicated half my channel to it. It's not necessarily one I saw coming, or one I even saw coming based on the EBK comics, because Bruce in that was very pro Harley and Ivy. Again, could be an executive decision, could just be wanting to use Diedrich Bader a bit more, which I'm not going to complain about. I think Diedrich Bader is great. The actual kidnapping of Bruce was a bit lackluster and not particularly interesting. This could have been a fun hijinks moment, but it was just like a pink dress and a tiara. I enjoyed the King plot. Some of the set designs. Is it set designs in animation? Would you call it that? Anyway, some of the art here in the animation is just beautiful and strange and ethereal and interesting, and it almost has this BoJack-esque feel, which shout out to BoJack for arguably being the best animated television series of all time. The crucifixed shark Jesus reference was a great callback to We're Really Big on Jesus being a shark. The story was actually just depressing and sad and kind of miserable, and I think it was reflective of kind of the themes the writers have been focusing on this season. What happens when someone you care about wants to, destroy the world or sell your ancestral land to Aquaman's shitty brother. Speaking of Orm, the joke about the mask was funny, but Ugly Orm is so upsetting. Orm is like top 5 hottest dudes in the DC universe, and that was a very disturbing moment for me. This scene was cute. I will reiterate that this Babs is awesome and refreshing, even if mildly annoying, but she's a teenager, and that's why I like her. She's an unsexualized teen nerd who just kind of wants to be friends with people, which is like peak Babs. It doesn't get any better than that. And again, for clarity's sake, Harley and Babs being friends is good and should not need to intervene with her relationship with Ivy, but I'm sure it somehow will. I guess I want to comment on something I said at some point, I don't know when, but I know I made a comment about Scarecrow being killed and how, even though it feels unnecessary for characters to be killed off like that, I thought it was quite funny that there were like background male red shirts in this show, and that they were being treated this way in a show led by women, in a way that women would often be treated in a show led by men. However, it is also kind of crazy that they're just like unnecessarily killing off half of the rogues gallery at this point. They're going to run out of characters to use. Not sure how I feel about Harleen reappearing. I loved seeing Harleen, don't get me wrong, but I'm also like, why now? Why this scene? There have been so many different points at which Harleen could have appeared, and this one? Really? That's what I mean. It feels like they're giving this moment way more weight than it deserves. Like, Harley kind of likes Batgirl doesn't feel like it should be a big controversial statement. Last few notes. Ivy's power is increasing massively. No one, I don't think, is kind of understanding how big of a problem that's going to be. It's always a thing in the comics. When Ivy gets too powerful, she cannot control it. Fear State just happens. She goes more green, therefore more batshit, pun intended. So that's going to play into the last 3 episodes and this whole finale they've been building up to between Bruce and Ivy. Selina gives no fucks, and I love it. The final scene of the episode was great. Bruh, I'm so nervous about the last 3 episodes of this show. This season has been wild. Like, both predictable and totally erratic. I'm super, super excited to kind of look back on it as a whole in a few weeks, compare it to the earlier seasons, look back at maybe some of the things that I've said before about the show and see if I still feel that way. I also really want to make a video about all the things I don't like about this show, because I talk about the show a lot and it's usually positive. I made a hour-and-a-half video about how it was the best queer show on television at the time, which, you know, hyperbole, but still I talk a lot of good about the show and I do actually really enjoy it. I love Harley and Ivy. This is the first time we've had them in canon and properly in a very long time, and I will never not appreciate that. But it's also fun to critique the things that you do love, and this show isn't perfect. I definitely have some things that I would like to call it out for, whilst praising it in all its glory at the same time. Yeah, I'm just so nervous about this last 3 episodes. I don't really have much to say except I'm kind of scared. And I know it will be fine, because just trust me, I know it will be fine. But I'm curious about what our characters are going to look like at the end of this. And again, characters, less relationships, you know. I'm curious about how out of character this show is going to continue to be in the name of comedy, or whether it's going to pull back the reins a bit and focus on some of those things we know to be true about characters like Harley, Ivy, Bruce, and Selina. Alright, that's it for now. I'm not gonna rant on forever. I hope you enjoyed this video. It was very quick, and it's just me pointing out some shit that I'm sure you all figured out yourself. I appreciate you being here. As always, it means more than I could ever put into words. This has been Black and White Thinking. My name is Mage. Stay safe. Love you all. Bye.